So good evening, thank you for coming. First item on the agenda is apologies. Town Clerk, do we have any?
I haven't received any apologies, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Have we had any of those?
I haven't received any, Madam Mayor.
No? Okay, thank
If
you.
there's any, Councillor Scriven, I think.
I can't see Lisa at the minute. Lisa, do you want to declare an interest?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Just to declare an interest, I'm a member of Play Park Action Rothamsted Committee that's working with the Council on the regeneration of Rothamsted Play Park.
Excellent, thank you. And now we go to item 3, which is Mayor's report and urgent items.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I think we've got Councillor Paul indicating as well.
Oh, I missed that, sorry.
Hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
There's about 3 references through this agenda on things that are to do with our transfer from Solvents. Do we need to declare an interest still? I'm asking Carl.
So, Madam Mayor, I don't think we're taking any key decisions today regarding the district stuff. So, I don't believe that any district councillors need to declare any interest.
That's worth checking.
Thank you. Yes, definitely worth checking. Thank you. Item 3, Mayor's report and urgent items. Do you have any urgent items to raise?
I don't, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. In which case, I'll just say for the Mayor's report that I had a really enjoyable night on Friday with a bingo. I won a line, which was great fun. And I have an auction of promises that is up and running now for everyone to have a look at. I'd like to say a really big thank you to those councillors who have supported bingo and the auction of promises. It's much, much appreciated in these difficult times of fundraising. So thank you to those who've helped. Now I go to item 4, which is, do we have any questions, public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22?
I have not received any, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Have we received any questions which have previously been submitted by members of the council?
Again, nothing received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, in which case we'll go straight to item 6, the minutes. Do we all agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2020? Those in agreement? I think so. Thank you very much. Our next item of business is item 7, minutes of committees and working parties reporting to the council. Do we have Councillor Ellis now?
We don't, Madam Mayor.
Don't, okay. Item 7.1 is the Community Services Committee. So could I ask Councillor Scriven, please, to present these minutes?
I'd just like to present the minutes for the Community Services Committee. Meeting was held on the 16th of September 2020 and the 4th of November 2020, circulated herewith.
And there are no recommendations to council?
No recommendations to council.
Thank you very much. Item 7.2, which is the Planning Committee, and I'd like to ask Councillor Farmer to present these minutes. You're muted, Rosemary.
Sorry, I'll try again. Please present the minutes of Planning Committee held on the 6th of October and the 27th of October as previously circulated, and there are no recommendations.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. We'll move straight now to item 8, officers' reports. The first one is 8.1, which is the Forward Planner and Resolution Tracker. It looks as though January is going to be a really full agenda, but is there anything that you'd like to add, Town Clerk? Any updates?
Madam Mayor, just 2 points to make, if that's okay, and then happy to take any questions. So, as you alluded to, January is a very busy agenda, both in terms of number of items, but also the estimated size of the pack, I think, having looked at those items. So, I just wanted to make you aware, Madam Mayor, that the aim is to get that pack out in the first week in January, to give council additional time to consider it. Normally we would circulate about a week before, but we're trying to bring that forward this time, just recognising that there are a number of different reports and pages that council will need to go through. And then, Madam Mayor, on page 18, in terms of updates, I was just going to give a brief update as to the devolution of assets from the District Council. So as it stands, we are still working through and discussing with officers the details of the transfer and the heads of terms based upon the principles that this council has agreed. This includes reviewing a significant amount of contracts and agreements that the town council will take on as part of the transfer. So as officers, we're working through some of those at the moment, and we're waiting to receive some further ones for us to consider. In parallel to that, we're also working up a number of the projects that the council has in principle agreed to support once we own the site. So that does include the play area redevelopment, of which there's an item on the agenda later on this evening. And it also includes the development of the 3G pitch and clubhouse pavilion, where we're having some very useful conversations with the external funder and local partners to start to bring together the agreement that are required for that, and also the business case. We've got an early timetable for that particular project, should council ultimately approve it once we get to the stage of owning the park. And we are hopeful that we could see the completion of that 3G pitch in late 2022. So that would be quite a good turnaround, quite swift, should all things go as we would plan to. And the final point to say, Madam Mayor, is that there's going to be further council decisions required on the devolution of assets in future meetings next year.
Thank you very much. That's very encouraging about the 3G pitch. And also I'd like to say we'd all really appreciate the extra time looking at the size of the agenda for January. So thank you very much for arranging that. We have two recommendations. 2.1.1, note and approve subject to any comments or amendments, the forward planner attached to Appendix A. And 2.1.2, note the resolution tracker attached to Appendix B and approve the removal of those resolutions marked complete. Does anyone have any questions or queries? Comments? Yes, thank you. Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A minor point on the park, taking over the park responsibilities. I happen to notice that there is now a very large pond which has formed towards where I would call the old sledging slope ends. That pond is not draining away, it's becoming stagnant, it's beginning to smell. Question is, how are we going to solve that, and whose responsibility should it be? Is it being created as a result of all the landfill that's taking place to the east of it, or is it for some other reason? It is becoming a bit of an eyesore.
I agree, yes. Town Clerk.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, I think the issue that we're seeing in that area is a result of the wider development that's happening and the levelling out of the soil. The arrangements that we're having with the District Council is that there will be arrangements for them to make good that area up to a period of time that they have to make it good. So what we don't want is to take on that area and then find in 6 months' time that it's not been suitably put together. So there will be clauses within the agreement when we take ownership of the land that responsibility will remain with the district to the point at which we deem it to be made good. The wider points around the build-up of water, I think I might have mentioned this at the previous meeting, certainly at committees, and that is, Madam Mayor, that when we take ownership of the park, one of the things that the council will want to do straight away is to establish its own management plan for the park. And I think that management plan would, in my recommendation, would need to include some flood measures that the town council would want to consider. Now, there are some long-term, bigger infrastructure flood management projects that we could consider, but there are also some shorter, smaller, in both timescales and costs, such as soakaways, that I think we could consider when we take on the park. So as part of the management plan, we will need to consider that. The other important point to make in terms of liability, Madam Mayor, is that any liability, flood liability of issues that have happened prior to our ownership will be retained with the District Council. So we know that there have previously been issues around some surrounding properties. So if there's any outstanding liabilities around previous floods, then that liability will stay with the District Council. The Town Council would, however, take on future liabilities that might arise.
Thank you. Councillor Turnbull, do you want to come back?
Yes, may I just, Madam Mayor, therefore ask Carol, will specifically the warranties or commitments given by the District Council cover that pond? They won't sort of argue that pond is an act of God, etc., and not due down to their work in the ground reclamation or ground making up. Will it be specifically covered? I.e., it won't get missed, or argument will be whether it's included or not.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. So I think what we will be doing, especially having heard the comments made this evening, making sure that nothing's missed as part of that transfer.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
what we'll be doing closer to the time, closer to the point of actually transferring, we'll be carrying out further site visits to make sure that we understand what the condition is of the park now, and to make sure that those kind of clauses are picked up prior to it finally being wrapped up.
Thank you. Councillor Butterworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just continuing the point about this pond that's formed. There always has been a small pond there, but now it's huge. Partly, I think, because of the works and some of the water flowed back from the topsoil, but partly, I think, because there was so much rain, the amount was unprecedented. But there, as a result, we have the pond. It's not draining, and it is very, very smelly because there's no algae to deal with bacteria and decay. Now, maybe it's for me to take up with SADC, but maybe the town clerk could also factor it in his conversations that certainly the people of Harpenden would prefer not to have that smell, if that can be dealt with sooner rather than later, please.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions to make? Are we happy to go to the recommendations? Okay, so the first recommendation, 2.1.1, note and approve subject to any comments or amendments, the forward planner attached to Appendix A. 2.1.2, note the resolution tracker attached to Appendix B and approve the removal of those resolutions marked complete. I think we can agree that duly noted. Thank you very much. The next item is 8.2, which is the Capital Improvement Programme. This is the first time that it's been reported to Council, so if anyone has any feedback they would like to make about the level of detail they need for this, please let me and the town clerk know, because obviously there's a lot of background information that's held, and if anyone feels it's necessary, just say the word. So in this item, the recommendation is simply Council is asked to note the progress of the projects within the Capital Improvement Programme. So does anybody have any comment they would like to make now? Yes, Councillor Priggen. You're muted, Councillor Priggen.
Sorry, thank you,
okay.
Madam Mayor. I've got a point to make about the play equipment in Rothamsted Park and the allocation of our budget for it. As you can see, the total estimated cost is 250,000. We allocate 150. Some of that has already been funded in another way, but the funding shortfall would be made good by hopefully by Harpenden Trust and Veolia Trust. I don't know Veolia Trust, but I'm concerned about, at this moment in time, us asking for funding from Harpenden Trust for this purpose. And I wanted to raise that and see what other people felt about that. Just because, one, Harpenden Trust is quite a big local charity and will have lots of demands on its resources right now, I think. And secondly, it's really hard to fundraise for them, as we were informally discussing before this meeting. So I am asking really if there is any way we could change the allocation of funds to it to make sure that we can continue with the playground, because I think this is a big thing and really a flagship improvement for when we take over the park. But is it possible for us to do it in a way without requesting funding from Harpenden Trust in particular?
I think what I would reply to that is obviously it would be totally down to the Harpenden Trust whether or not they felt able to support the project. So it's not purely our decision. Perhaps I could go to Councillor Scriven and ask how park fundraising has been going.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Councillor Priggen, we're not actually applying only to those two sources. So we're requesting funding from Luton Airport Veolia, which is a large trust, and a couple of the local St Albans parks have had successful applications in the recent past or are part way through. So we think we have a strong application for that as well. And that is for can you still hear me?
Yes.
Fine, my thing's beeping in my ear, but as long as you can hear me. So we're applying for £45,000 from Veolia, and actually that would pretty much cover the shortfall if we are successful in that application, in which case we can scale back the monies that we're requesting from other grant providers. So we've applied to Veolia, Luton Airport, Harpenden Trust. We also have a private individual who is looking to supply some funding. So unfortunately, with these things, we've got to cast the net wide. We don't know which applications are going to be successful and what amount of money will be granted. So it may well be the case that we don't need all the monies that we obtain in the end, but that's the process we're going through at this stage. In terms of Harpenden Trust, it goes through the board, and they ultimately make the decisions on whether or not they can support us and to what extent that they're prepared to do so. I know they're very keen to invest in the project. We don't know what amount they will support us with, but we just have to go through the process.
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. I saw Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one quick comment as an aside. Has anyone approached the Jarvis Charitable Trust? If not, a letter to Lady Parkinson, the chairperson of the Jarvis Charitable Trust down in Cold Harbour Lane, might get some response. Who knows?
Thank you for that. Councillor Maynard.
Just a point of information, Madam Mayor. The Trust has in the past supported improvements to playgrounds. For example, they contributed to Porters Park when Porters Park was improved. So this is not an uncommon request, and they've been extremely helpful in the past.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? Councillor Paul.
Yes, just one of the items on page 24, the improved installation of council buildings. I see we put 40k down as a cost and put 20k down for us. There's no indication where the extra 20 is coming from.
I'll pass that to Town Clerk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just by way of an update on that particular project, so we've actually carried out an initial energy audit now. At the time of writing this report, it hadn't been done, but it has been done. And we've received the report back today. So as expected, I think Park Hall, given the age of the building, is actually throwing up some energy issues. So we are able now to turn that into an action plan. The reason for the difference in the funding is the £20,000 is capital reserve funding that the council has already approved. Our officer's aim in putting together the estimated 40,000 is that the shortfall would be made up by our general budget. So we have annual repairs and maintenance budgets for the Town Hall and Park Hall, Madam Mayor. So we would look to essentially create any improvements would become mini projects that the internal operations manager would manage within her budget as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor DeCourt.
I would like to raise the final issue on the list, which is about the new pedestrian cyclist entrance to the station on the south side from Southdown. Firstly, I'm not sure about the land. I know we're not allowed to spend our money on land that is not we don't own. So, for example, that was the primary reason given for not doing anything with cycle crossings, because Herts Highways own them. So I'm just like a clarification on that about that monies, because I presume it's Network Rail land, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, Madam Mayor. Sorry, Madam Mayor. So the money that's been allocated there, so the council has allocated £35,000 to this project through its capital reserve. earlier this year. The council will need to reconsider this project at a number of key points next year. The first one being actually considering the draft designs and the next steps around community engagement and the knock-on implications. The land isn't owned by the town council, so the land within the scheme would be a mix of highway and a mix of Network Rail land.
Okay, so thank you, but just to be clear, then that's a different point. When we were talking about cycle crossings, it was ragged by this group or a subgroup of it. We were told that we couldn't do that because it was highways land. It just seems inconsistent.
I think because we're working in partnership with both Network Rail and Herts Highways, it's a slightly different case. We're still waiting for the design to come from County. Apparently, County are already working on a design for the station approach area as well. And we would obviously like some input into that, not financial clearly, but to see what sort of plans they have in mind for those two areas. So I think it's right for us to be involved as a council with the planning decision. Councillor Court.
Well, we did speak about working with Herts Highways on the cycle crossings, and that was then, I was told that was impossible. So
I think we're talking about a huge difference in scale, though, aren't we? One plan was costed at 2 million, and this is considerably less. That is one consideration. The other consideration is absolutely what we said at the time, was that if you do put in cycling paths, cycling signage, we have absolutely no control over that whatsoever once it's down. So it could be dug up, as we said before, the next day. So it's the value that you would put on risking a large sum in order for potential complete loss the next day, or a relatively much smaller sum, working again in partnership. So this isn't something that we are taking over. This is something that we will add to when we've seen the designs. Councillor Court.
I don't find any of that answer satisfactory. It doesn't answer any of my questions, but I'll move on to the second concern I have about it, which is that it's referred to the lack of community buy-in as a risk is low. I've had contact from residents around the Meadow Walk and Aysgarth Close area that suggests they don't buy into it at all, and they raise a series of pretty fundamental safety and other objections. Clearly this is not the place to have that discussion, but I wanted to be put on record that they raise those issues. And there seems to be, in fact, I was actually contacted because a resident said that, who'd I've been previous contact with, said she'd noticed people surveying in the last week, and she wondered if it was anything to do with anything that might be going on, because she'd seen this thing in the past. And it seems like we're quite a long way in with whether highways or whatever to do this. This seems to be odd to me. And I'd like to know if the safety considerations have been thought through at all. For example, there's no pavement on that side of Crabtree Road for at least 50 yards going north. There's an issue about the Blind Bend near where the railway is. It's very difficult to cross. A lot of people during lockdown, including myself, have walked up and down that stretch. When you're trying to get social distancing and step around people, you have to step into a road that's a blind road. They have cars and bicycles going in and out of that access. I think there needs to be some significant safety improvement by highways to make it feasible. I'm surprised that highways are even at this point considering it. And then on top of that, there are massive parking issues in that it's a pedestrian and cycle access. It's not clear to me, without any other cycle improvements in town, there'll be many more cyclists using it as a gain. And it seems to be just another opening up another congestion and collection point. So that they've raised some concerns. I can analyse them just now without being an expert from highways agency that they exist. And I just want to have it registered that I don't believe the risk is low at all.
I think the risk is low for community buy-in. I understand what you're saying by that. Until the council's actually seen the designs, we can't really comment. We don't know what they're coming up with. But clearly safety would be a huge issue for everybody. So certainly, you may disagree that the risk is low, but until we're able to see the drawings, see what the plans and the designs actually are, we won't know what we're going to the local community with until we've reached that stage, which of course we're a long way from, apparently, at the moment. Last comment.
Madam Mayor, you said we can't really comment, but we've got a comment there that the risk is low. If we say we don't know what the risk is,
that's not a comment. That's a judgment by the town clerk, which I fully support. You're talking about a very local community. We also have to take into account the wider community, and there has been some push from residents for quite a long time to access the south side of the station instead of everybody going in through the one entrance. So it isn't just relevant to the area immediately that we're talking about. It's relevant to the whole town and the commuter pattern of moving. So it's wider than you think. And I think it's a judgment call. You disagree with low, that's fine. I think that's enough on that issue. Unless we have any other...
I'd just like to recall it's not wider than I think. I will know what I think. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know what I said to offend, but okay. So in which case we shall now go to the recommendation, which is simply to note.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I think you've got
I'm sorry, I didn't
another
see
indication.
Councillor Maynard there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may say, I would ask that there is communication with South councillors in terms of putting in a parking scheme in particularly in Aysgarth Close associated with the new entrance, just to give them residence parking and prevent inappropriate parking in that area. But I've highlighted this, and I would hope that district councillors from South Ward would pick that issue up and run with it in parallel with any project.
Thank you. Councillor Butterworth.
Well, just no point of order. I suspect, unfortunately, Councillor Maynard means West Ward rather than South Ward. Thank you.
Oh, I thought Aysgarth Close was south. Is it west? Just shows. Okay, it's down to the West Ward councillors then.
Thank you. Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not strictly related to any of the items on this particular programme, but presumably once we seem to be getting sort of into the midpoint of delivery on most of these by about September 2021, I would say. Once we've gotten towards that point, are there any plans to open up a second round of the consultation on what we might spend the unallocated capital receipt on, or have we tabled that discussion for a longer period of time than that? I just thought I'd ask for an update.
I think we agreed to reserve that right to discuss further later, but we haven't got a date on it. Town Clerk.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just to add to what you said there, so there are still a number of items that were marked as amber when we considered this back in, when Council considered it back in the summer, that are having further scoping carried out, and they'll come to Council next year for consideration. The other point I would make is that in the Capital Improvement Programme projects at the moment, I think there's 13 that are detailed here. A number of these are will lead to projects in themselves. So the Public Realm Improvement Plan could lead to half a dozen projects. And I think we might be being slightly optimistic if September next year is the middle of some of these. I think for lots of them, they're either at the start or they might be in the middle of a very detailed process. So hopefully that provides some clarity on those wider projects, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? In which case we're just noting that one. So we shall now move to 8.3, which is the transport and movement strategy. And I think I'll ask the Town Clerk to introduce this item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of points to make. So just for context, this report and the supporting Appendix A have been provided as context to this wider strategy. This was considered back by CPF in March of this year, although I appreciate March this year feels like a long time ago now. It was actually our last face-to-face meeting. We had a programme of engagement planned shortly after CPF in March, but obviously with lockdown following quickly after, that hasn't happened. So one of the key reasons to bring this back to council today is there is a lot of things that have happened since March that potentially have an impact upon transport and movement in the future. And perhaps we're not in a position now to say quite what that impact is, but we felt it sensible to bring this back to council just to reconsider whether there's any actions that need to come out, or whether there's anything that in addition that should be considered based on changes that we know about so far. So for example, within the Appendix D, there is an action in there that talks about smart signage. And if you refer you back to the summer when we talked about capital reserve, there was a decision taken not to fund any smart signage. So that could be a action that now comes out of that strategy, because the council have almost already taken a decision upon that. The other point to make, Madam Mayor, is in relation to the second recommendation around agreeing the next steps that you wish to take. Now, normally what we do with a draft strategy like this is put it out for some community engagement. Now, clearly at the moment it's very difficult for us to do that to include everybody because we can't do anything face to face. So in considering the next steps, you may wish to consider some changes tonight, but revisit this strategy again next year once perhaps some of the wider impacts of COVID-19 are apparent, and when we might be able to carry out some what I would call proper engagement upon it. So that's just some thoughts, Madam Mayor, and welcome any questions and comments.
No, I appreciate that. I think that's a good point, because the situation at the moment is still very fluid, and we won't know until quite late in the spring, I should imagine, whether or not we've got sort of permanent change in commuter behaviour. But so, thank you for that point. Councillor Butterworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, obviously there's a lot of force in what the Town Clerk has said. We're in a period of great uncertainty, and whatever, it would be quite some time before commuting numbers come back, if they ever come back to the extent before. Having said that, of course, the parking problems in Harpenden have been problems for decades, and residents keep asking what's happening, and we're in danger of just going around in circles, and in danger of there being, always a reason not to. I accept that the current reason is a pretty good one as a reason to go, but I'm just wondering whether we shouldn't just get on with it, because it is going to be quite some time before we know about true commuting numbers. Maybe we're talking about 2 or 3 years. And I don't think it would be wrong for this to be left open for anything like that period of time. So I personally would be in favour of getting on with it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the Town Clerk is absolutely right. It's not only commuting patterns that have changed, it's also shopping patterns and transport patterns to shops. I've noticed that a lot of people are cycling or walking to the shops and perhaps having goods delivered to their home. Others are incorporating visits to the shop into their daily walk. Now, we have no idea whether that will continue after, post-COVID, post next Easter. We also don't know, as Councillor Butterworth has said, whether commuters will start to commute again, or whether they'll stay at home, or whether we'll reach some sort of stasis where they partially work from home, partially commute. There are literally a lot of unknowns in this. Add to that the difficulty of consultation at the moment. And it would seem to me it might be best to let everything settle a bit, see what happens, take a quick look at the strategy, and then move forward. Now, there is one proviso on that. It might be worth going through the actions which have been identified and see if there's any action which could give an immediate benefit. Yeah, and we could perhaps leave that to the Town Clerk and the Town Mayor to look at that and perhaps take a view, because there may be in there something we could do that we know is going to be needed, irrespective of what happens longer term. Yeah, and that will partially address Councillor Butterworth's concerns. So
Thank
I'll
you.
leave that for yourself, Madam Mayor, and for the town clerk to comment on.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I entirely concur with what's been said so far. My reaction, there's no point in spending money or taking decisions until we know what the new normal is going to be, whatever that is. The only one that I would suggest we perhaps do think about is whether we do try to introduce the 30-minute limit for parking, particularly on the likes of the high street, just 30 minutes rather than, is it 1 hour at the moment or 2 hours? 30 minutes would certainly allow a much more rapid turnover of vehicles. On the basis of someone's coming in for what I call a long shop at a supermarket, and you'd expect them to park in one of the other car park rather than the high street. So certainly I would suggest that we look at the 30-minute rule for the high street and maybe 1 or 2 other limited areas as an immediate issue.
Thank you. Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a slight point of clarification on the parking signage thing. My recollection of the discussion in the summer was that we didn't fund the street signage because it would come up as a point of discussion in the transport and movement strategy, rather than that we didn't fund it because we rejected the idea. So I mean, it's possible that council will throw it out anyway tonight. I just thought I would correct that, because I think I was one of the bigger proponents of that idea in the summer, and that was certainly my recollection of why we had tabled that particular discussion.
Councillor Court.
I just want to talk about a specific couple of things that are in the action plan matrix, which maybe to make it simpler we could look at again. One of the things that is up there is on the first of the 2 pages on the action plan matrix is the explore launch of driveway sharing scheme. It's made the news in the last couple of weeks about private sector sharing schemes, and they're all over places like London, and in fact they made the news because of fraudulent use of them. That's not my issue here. My issue is that if there are private schemes, and if we reach a time maybe when we return to normal in terms of commuting patterns, I would imagine that they would compete with us. I mean, firstly, I don't think it's appropriate that the public sector should be trying to take away private entrepreneurship, which can be done quite at the same time. But also, it seems if we invested any money or time in that, that would be a waste. So I just think that one possibly could be removed, because it doesn't seem to be something that we would sensibly get involved in. The other one would be to make a point about the electrical vehicle charging points in car parks. I mean, I think the whole concept of providing more electrical vehicle charging points is a very good one for all the sustainability benefits it has. But we have to make sure that there's not conflict here, because if they're provided, I presume they would be on effectively car parking spaces, and people will be charging for some time. So they would be using the point to a potential car parking space to charge their vehicle. I can think of a few remedies to that. They're not without their problems, but you need to be aware of that conflict as we're talking about parking today, as well as that particular part of the matrix.
Thank you. And Councillor Drake, followed by Councillor Heritage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple bit. I agree with what's been said about the parking and the uncertainties regarding patterns after COVID-19, but I think there's a danger of mixing up a transport strategy with a parking strategy. We need to bear in mind that there are some important points regarding sustainable transport in this document, which are likely to remain irrespective of the outcome of COVID-19, such as the cycling facilities will be a good example, the use of the hopper buses, and I don't think we should defer continuing to progress looking at those issues, just because we do not know yet what the commuter or indeed the retail high street parking issues might be.
Councillor Heritage. Oh, perhaps I was mistaken. You're on mute, David.
Press the space bar, David.
Right, sorry, my apologies. Madam Mayor, I'd like to put Councillor de Court slightly emphasise his point. He's wrong. 2 years ago, we as an administration in the District Council had a map of planned electric charging points in all the district car parks and indeed high streets, both in St Albans and Harpenden. Sadly, 2 years have gone by and nothing's happened with the District Council at the moment.
Councillor de Court, and followed by Councillor Priggen.
Sorry, I don't understand the comment made by Councillor Heritage. I was talking about use of the points. I wasn't talking about where they should be placed.
Councillor Priggen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just following on from Councillor Drake's point and the point I've made before about cycling in the transport and movement strategy. When we first discussed this, we were sort of politically and central government wise in a different space from where we are now. We've been, I don't quite know what the latest of it is, but we've been promised monies, I believe, at county council level to invest in cycling strategy. And we've talked in these meetings before about partnering up with county council to promote Harpenden as a great place for improving cycling facilities, whereby we could partner with county council, so not take the lead like we do with the cycling parking. But I thought it was worth bringing that back up in this context, because this is what we talked about before we had that commitment from central government about improvement of cycling facilities. And certainly, I think, and I would imagine everybody agrees with me, if county council has got money available to improve cycling facilities, then where better to invest than in Harpenden?
Thank you. I think that could possibly come under the next steps. So we could contact county leader of the council and ask what the situation is with regard to grants and what opportunities they see for Harpenden. Definitely we can do that. Any other comments or questions? So at the moment, I don't get the feeling that we are agreeing the draft strategy in Appendix D. Is that correct? Are we agreeing it or are we deferring it? I need some comments. Councillor Cowley.
Would we have to agree the entire strategy, or could we take a nuanced approach and agree bits of it but not others?
Yes, I think we can comment, certainly. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'd be in favour of deferring it unless there's anything we can put into practice, quite quickly and that we think would be effective. Thank
you. Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to say I support Councillor Ellis that I think we would be best deferring it, because although I can see where Councillor Cowley is coming from, I actually think in practice to try and cherry pick bits out and say, I mean, there are bits we can look at now, but I think really it needs to be looked at holistically when we come to agree the draft, and therefore it makes sense to wait until we've a little clearer picture of where we are.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, probably worth deferring, and but I do like Councillor Maynard's point. I mean, I don't want to put an unfair onus on you, Madam Mayor, or the town clerk, but if they look into this and they see something that they think might work in the short term, then it'd be a shame of us deferring it. It does affect that. So yeah, I think we can defer, but then I like Councillor Maynard's point of if there's anything that we specifically that we think we can move forward with, then yeah, I think we could give that to the town mayor and to Carl.
Thank you, Councillor Butterworth.
Thank you. I'm not arguing against that, because obviously I started out with a particular point of view, but it's very much a minority view. But what I would ask, please, is there's a matter of public relations with our council taxpayers. We make it clear that we have looked at the situation, and for a very good reason. We've decided that we have a draft strategy, and we want to do some work for a very good reason. We're not doing that at present, and we'll review it. We'll come up with a date, whatever it is, middle of next year or whatever, but just so that people are reassured that it's not totally forgotten, which it isn't. Thank you.
Good point, thank you. Councillor Scriven.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I would be in support of deferring it. The only one that I would perhaps highlight at this point would be the increase and improve of cycle parking facilities in Harpenden. I'm led to believe that's a fairly inexpensive thing to achieve, and I think it would benefit people now. I mean, obviously there's a tendency for people to be on their bikes more, so I think that's something we could perhaps implement sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Any other comments to add? In which case, yes, Town Clerk.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So just having listened to Council there, I wonder whether you might want to, as way of resolution, note that this is a working document, this is a working strategy, and that whilst you're not approving it this evening, you'll look at it again next year. However, in the meantime, there are some actions in here that we can further investigate, such as the cycle parking facilities, such as contacting the county councils regarding the funding they have available and their plans for that, and also around exploring the electric vehicle charging points. I appreciate that's probably quite a long resolution, but if you're happy to go forward on that basis, Madam Mayor, that gives me a very clear steer as to what I would be bringing forward back to council or committee next year.
I think you phrased it beautifully. Do people in favour of this? Yes, I think that's unanimous. Thank you for that. In which case, I think that incorporated next steps as well, really, didn't it?
I think you did, Madam Mayor. Yeah. So, yeah, if you're happy.
Yep, definitely happy. Okay, so we go on now to item 8.4, Rothamsted Park Playground redevelopment tender. Before we have a look at this, is there any amendment that you'd like to make, Town Clerk?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So there is just one addition that we'd like to add into this document. And whilst not having the exact wording for you, we would like to have in the tender reference to the tenders providing us an environmental impact assessment or statement to showcase how they will not only deal with the equipment that's there at the moment, but also show how they're going to be sourcing the future materials. So that would be the only addition that officers would add in to this tender afterwards, if that's agreed. The other thing we would like to make change in relation to that is we'd like for that to be part of the screening as well. So the tender are having to provide a environmental impact assessment or statement that is appropriate for the council, and it's a yes no. So if they don't provide one that we feel is appropriate, they wouldn't progress onto the assessment.
Yes, I think that's clear. I think that's a very good move. Thank you for that. So the recommendation is council is asked to approve the tender set out in Appendix A. Do I have any comments? Yes, Councillor Brigham.
Sorry, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that I think it looks absolutely amazing. I think it's fantastic to see the age groups being separate, and it's fantastic to see both older and younger children being catered for in what looks like a very safe way, like no way that a teenager will trample over a toddler. So I think well done to get this far, really. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I think I'll pass that over to Councillor Scriven because of all the work that Park have done. So very well done to Park. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh yes, Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question on time frame. So we'll be approving the final contractor for this on the 25th of January, as I understand. If in the event that there was a delay in securing the transfer of asset from the district council, would we still appoint a contractor at that meeting in January, or will we then have to wait until the May council meeting I just wanted to get a sense of the time frame and the potential risks around delay.
Well, Town Clerk will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we would take it on without having the land.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, in terms of there are two risks in January associated to the appointment of the contractor. So the one Councillor Cowley refers to in terms of not owning the land, we could appoint a contractor subject to the ownership happening. So that would be fairly low risk for us with the contractor. The one that would be higher risk is what was alluded to at an earlier item in terms of the funding. So we would only be able to appoint a contractor when we know we've got the full funding package together. So that at that point, Madam Mayor, we wouldn't look to award a contractor. I think having said that, it will be Council's decision in the end of January to decide, what they think the level of risk is, depending on where we're at with everything. One point I would just make, Madam Mayor, is, and most of our timetables are like this, but when we tend to deliver, it's a very ambitious timetable. The biggest risk to it is actually securing all of the money. We set this timetable out because this means pretty much it guarantees we deliver for next summer, which we think is a really nice milestone, summer holidays. However, any delay in finalising the contractor will have an impact on the delivery date. So, probably like for like. So a month delay would mean it would move to August and so on and so forth. But, I just echo what you said before in terms of Park. Huge credit for what they've done on this. And we've, as town council officers, we've just had to finesse it a little bit to put it into the council kind of governance machine. But it's absolutely brilliant what they've done.
Good. Councillor Hill, followed by Councillor Priggen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure this is the case, but can I just check that Park will get an opportunity to have a look at the submission of the tenders, and then and any views that they have might be included in a report that the council will get in January.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So the way in which we're operating with this, so there are 3 members of Park that are going to be assessing the tenderers alongside myself and Sarah Brimley, our project manager. That assessment will be what is informed to council at the end of January. So it's very, very important that Park are involved in that assessment and we work in partnership with them.
Councillor Priggen.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate my point from earlier, which I'm not sure if I made that clear enough. Given the work that's put in there, given the timing and the school summer holidays and the possibility that charities might be strapped for funding, what would we do in case the funding isn't going to be made available by charities? To what extent are we willing as town council to give up a little bit more of the budget that we have from the capital receipt towards this playground?
I think we could look at different options. For example, we could either scale back what's wanted in the park, or we could phase different areas in. There are different ways to approach it, I think.
Yeah. So, sorry, Madam Mayor. Just to add to that is that, just to reiterate, the beauty of this coming back to council in January is prior to agreeing the tender, you will have a very clear understanding as to what the finances are looking at, what the position is of the transfer of assets. So those kind of options you've set out there, Madam Mayor, you'll be able to take a decision on in January.
Okay. Councillor Cousin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very quickly, the other playground refurbishments, are they, I'm thinking of kind of economies of scale, if there was the possibility for a contractor of getting more work, would we get a better deal? Or is it better to separate them out and have one contractor concentrating on Rothampstead and another contractor concentrating on Brownwood Play Area, for example?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, so the plan at the moment is to have is 2 packages of work. So the Rothampstead Play Area and the 2 smaller play areas packaged as one. The reason for that is because they're at very different stages of their project. So the smaller play areas have to go through, a significant period of community engagement if we do the approach that we normally do. So if we were packaging it all together, that means that the Rothampstead Play Area would have to wait for that to be done. So there isn't really any economies of scale in terms of grouping it all together, I don't think. What there is the contractors, when we will be sharing this tender, we are going to be making them aware that there are future opportunities in 2021 that they may wish to look out for. And so putting forward competitive tenders at this stage, although they're individual procurement exercises, could be good for them in the future.
Any other comments or questions, or are we ready to go to the recommendation? Okay, the recommendation is Council is asked to approve the tender set out in Appendix A. Those in favour of approval? I think is unanimous. Thank you very much. And there being no further business, I think the meeting is now closed. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions.